The first mistake they made was tightening the restraints. The second was prying the wedding ring from her finger. The third, well, that would summon a storm their empire had no language to describe. The chamber smelled of sterilized iron, its walls sweating with condensation that carried the metallic tang of blood. Lyra Keene lay strapped to the slab, her body trembling not from weakness, but from the slow current of electricity the Arkari guards fed into her nerves in careful increments. The Arkari were methodical, towering reptilian forms in obsidian armor, with voices that clicked and reverberated like stones dragged across steel. They believed themselves masters of interrogation, artists of endurance. But their art had never met a human who smiled through broken lips. "Your silence is meaningless," rasped Guard Captain Varen, a creature with 4 arms and a hunger for cruelty. He leaned closer, his eyes black pools without lids. "We already know what you are. A healer, vulnerable, irrelevant. But irrelevant things can still scream." Lyra's head turned slowly, strands of sweat-damp hair clinging to her cheek. She fixed him with a gaze so unwavering it unsettled the surrounding guards. "You don't understand what you've done," she whispered. Her voice cracked, but her words cut through the chamber's hum. "You touched his ring." The guards chuckled, though unease shivered beneath their laughter. To them, a ring was trinket, scrap metal, nothing more. They could not fathom its meaning. Yet her defiance left them wary, as though some unseen shadow had shifted in the room. Beyond this prison ship, on the edge of a fractured colony world, Cale Keene walked through the smoke of a recent skirmish. His silhouette cut against the flame-lit rubble, lean, unhurried, merciless. Few ever spoke his name aloud. Among humans, he was whispered about as if he were a ghost soldier. Among aliens, a legend meant to frighten rookies, the Phantom of Orion. He carried himself like a man at peace with violence, not because he loved it, but because it answered something in him no prayer or law ever had. When Cale's hidden receiver crackled with intercepted Arkari chatter, prisoner taken, female, human, medical personnel, he stopped breathing for the span of a heartbeat. Then he moved with the calm precision of inevitability. He collected his knives first, then the pistol, then the battered photograph of Lyra tucked into his vest. It was the only ritual he allowed himself. Others prayed before battle. Cale remembered her laugh. Back aboard the Arkari warship, Varen escalated the cruelty. Needles pierced flesh. Waves of energy rolled across Lyra's body, her nerves screaming in protest. Yet she did not break. Instead, she reached inward into memory. The warmth of Cale's hand guiding her through crowded markets. His habit of stealing the last microwave burrito just to hear her scold him. His terrible jokes about Florida Man headlines that seemed more absurd than alien warlords. She clung to these fragments like lifelines, small human oddities more powerful than torture. Varen grew impatient. He activated a communicator, his guttural voice echoing through the chamber. "Command, confirm target. Husband identified as Operative Cale Keene, known Earth assassin. If located, terminate immediately." The other guards hissed approval. They relished the chance to hunt the predator whispered in their ranks. "But Lyra," she laughed. It was low, broken, but it carried an edge that sliced the room's certainty. "So you do know who my husband is?" Her lips dripped blood as she smiled. "Then you've already lost." For the first time, the guards' grip on their weapons shifted. For the first time, silence pressed into the chamber like an invisible weight. Cale was already en route. He had acquired a stolen shuttle, its controls patched with duct tape, an Earth miracle the Arkari had studied without understanding. He slipped between patrol routes, silent as hunger, his mind stripped of everything except the coordinates of the warship. His breathing slowed, his heart steady. The hunt was not rage. It was mathematics, inevitability, gravity itself. Back in the chamber, Varen leaned close to Lyra, forcing her to meet his lidless stare. "You think he will find you? We know his reputation. Even assassins bleed." Lyra's whisper burned sharper than any scream. "He doesn't bleed the way you think." And in that moment, the lights flickered. Just a pulse, a hesitation in the ship's steady hum. But the Arkari recognized intrusion. Sirens ignited across the decks. Varen's head snapped toward the corridor, mandibles clicking. Kale was aboard. He moved like a storm through steel passageways. One guard after another silenced before an alarm could form in their throats. His knives whispered against armor. His sidearm coughed once, twice. Then silence. Corridors left wet with warning. The Arkari would later write of him with confusion and terror. This one used duct tape. We still don't understand duct tape. Inside the chamber, Lyra heard the distant echoes. Metal striking metal. Sudden silence. The hiss of a door forced open. Her heart surged not with hope, but with certainty. The air tasted different. Varen barked orders, scattering his guards. They prepared for battle, but they were preparing for the wrong kind of war. Kale was not an army. He was inevitability. The chamber door slid open without ceremony. Two guards fell instantly, throats open before they could aim. Kale stepped inside, silent, eyes burning with a cold fury that made the air itself shrink. He saw Lyra strapped to the slab, her skin pale, her lips bruised, the absence of her ring glaring like a wound. "Kale," she breathed. He crossed to her in 3 strides, cutting restraints with practiced efficiency. His touch lingered only once, on the empty finger where the ring belonged. His jaw tightened. Behind him, Varen raised his weapon, but Kale's pistol was already leveled. A heartbeat stretched. Death trembled in the balance. Then Lyra, weakened but unbroken, forced herself upright. She stepped between them, her voice raw but steady. "He took my ring," she said, each word heavy with fire. "That's all you need to know." The shot rang out. Varen fell, armor cracking, silence swallowing the chamber. Lyra sagged into Kale's arms, her body trembling not from fear, but from the collapse of endurance. For a moment, nothing existed but their breathing. "You came," she whispered. "Of course," Kale answered, as though it were the simplest truth in the universe. The sirens wailed louder. Reinforcements would come, but for now there was only the two of them, bound together by blood, by survival, by a love the Arkari had failed to understand. And you, reader, remember this. Empires do not fall only to armies or weapons. Sometimes they fall because someone took a wedding ring from the wrong hand. Sometimes the smallest token is the loudest warning. And sometimes the quiet devotion of 2 souls will summon a storm no empire can contain. The Arkari had always believed humans were fragile, and to be fair, humans had done little to correct the assumption, until Kale boarded their worship with nothing but a pistol, a knife, and the stubbornness of someone who once survived his mother's attempt at cooking Thanksgiving turkey. The shuttle corridor reeked of ozone and panic. Alarms screamed in a shrill alien pitch designed to disorient intruders, but Kale moved through it like a predator who had heard worse at a rock concert. His boots left streaks of blood on the polished floor, evidence of the guards who had tried, unsuccessfully, to stop him. To the Arkari, this was chaos. To Kale, it was arithmetic, 1 step, 1 breath, 1 kill. Behind him, Lyra stumbled, still weak from the torture table. Her skin glistened with sweat, her body barely recovered from the restraint burns, but her spirit carried a strange radiance, like steel pulled glowing from a forge. She didn't complain. She didn't falter. She simply followed, her hand brushing the wall for balance, eyes sharp and unyielding. "Left or right?" she asked, her voice raw. Kale checked the schematic flickering across his wrist console. "Left takes us to an airlock. Right takes us to their commander. Then right." Her words dropped like iron. He studied her for half a second, the assassin in him calculating probabilities, the husband in him aching at her stubborn fire. He gave a curt nod, and they went right. The Arkari commander, Varen Kor, stood in a vaulted chamber that smelled of incense and war oil. His armor gleamed obsidian black, and in his clawed hands he carried a ceremonial spear tipped with humming plasma. Around him, guards formed a defensive ring, their faces taut with the awareness that the human ghost had already cut through half their number. When the chamber doors opened and Kale strode in with Lyra at his side, silence, devoured the alarms. For a moment, the galaxy itself seemed to hold its breath. "So, it is true?" Varen hissed, his voice heavy with disbelief. "The assassin takes a mate, and she is nothing but a healer. How human." Kale's lips twitched. Funny thing about healers. They know exactly where to cut deepest. The guards lunged. Kale moved first, a blur of violence. The pistol spat fire, a knife flashed silver, and bodies collapsed like marionettes with cut strings. Lyra ducked low, dragging herself behind a console, but her gaze never left him. She'd known he was deadly. She'd heard the rumors whispered among human troops. But seeing him now, fluid, precise, terrifying, was like watching a storm dance on the edge of control. Still, even storms can be trapped. The commander barked a command, and the floor erupted with blue containment fields, walls of light caging them in. Kale's bullets melted harmlessly against the energy barrier. For the first time, he stilled. "Your legend ends in this room," Varen sneered, spear raised. And then he made his mistake. He grabbed Lyra. The Arkari wrenched her from cover and pressed the spear's humming tip against her throat. Her eyes widened, but her hands curled into fists rather than tremble. Kale froze, weapon raised, every muscle drawn tight as a bowstring. "One more step, human," Varen taunted, "and she will burn from the inside out." Kale's silence was more dangerous than any retort. His finger hovered on the trigger, but his eyes, cold, endless, unblinking, never left Lyra's. He was weighing outcomes, probabilities, death tolls. She recognized the calculation, the way his mind mapped exits where none existed. And she decided for him. With a sudden twist, Lyra rammed her knee into the alien's joint. The spear faltered for an instant. She seized the opening, grabbed the weapon shaft, and shoved it upward. The plasma tip carved into Varen's throat in a sizzling hiss. The commander staggered back, clutching the wound, mandibles clicking frantically. His guards faltered, stunned by the audacity of prey that struck back. Kale didn't waste the heartbeat. He shot twice, dropped 2 guards, and in the confusion dove for Lyra, dragging her out of the collapsing ring of soldiers. Plasma fire blazed around them. Kale hurled a knife into the nearest guard's eye, then slammed his palm against the energy field's control node. Sparks erupted, and the barrier died. For the Arkari, the battle became horror. Their commander lay gurgling on the floor, his lifeblood spilling across the ceremonial stone, killed not by the infamous assassin, but by the fragile nurse they had dismissed. They retreated. Kale and Lyra ran. Corridors blurred in a haze of fire and screams. They reached a hangar, its vast expanse filled with shuttlecraft and refueling drones. Sirens thundered. Soldiers poured in from every side. Kale fired until his pistol clicked empty, then drew his last blade, teeth clenched. And then Lyra, exhausted, bloodied, still holding the plasma spear she had wrested from the commander, stepped forward. Her body shook with adrenaline and terror, but her voice carried across the hangar with clarity that stunned even Kale. "You think humans break?" she shouted, the spear raised high. "We heal, we laugh, we endure. And when you take from us, when you take what we love, we don't break. We fight." The hangar stilled. Even the Arkari soldiers hesitated, as though some primal warning had rooted itself in their bones. Kale watched her, pride flickering through his iron composure. She wasn't only surviving, she was transforming. Together, they seized a shuttle, its engines roaring to life under Kale's hands. Plasma fire streaked past as they launched, the warship shrinking behind them. The Arkari shouted into their calms, but their words carried no confidence, only disbelief. A nurse had slain their commander. An assassin had walked their halls like a phantom. And together, husband and wife had carved a wound into their empire's pride that would never fully close. Inside the shuttle, silence stretched as stars streaked into lines. Lyra slumped into the co-pilot's seat, the spear clattering to the floor. Her chest heaved. Blood still trickled from her wounds, but her eyes burned bright with something fierce, something new. "I killed him," she whispered, half to herself, half to Kale. He didn't flinch. He didn't scold or mourn. He only met her gaze, steady and unyielding. "You saved us both." She swallowed hard, looking at her stained hands. The healer's hands. The hands that had stitched wounds, set bones, soothed fevers, and now ended a life. "I don't know who that makes me anymore," she confessed. Cale reached out, his fingers brushing hers, grounding her. "It makes you human, and that's more dangerous than anything they've ever faced." Beyond the viewport, the stars burned endless, indifferent, eternal. But inside the shuttle, something fragile and defiant held stronger than any empire. And you, reader, remember this truth. The universe will measure strength by armies, weapons, empires carved in steel. But the real storm is quieter. It lives in ordinary hands forced to do extraordinary things. It begins not in glory, but in love. And when love is threatened, it can topple empires with nothing more than a single, stubborn spark. They said humans were obsessed with entertainment. Primitive reality shows, endless news cycles, men wrestling alligators for no reason. But what terrified the Arcari most was discovering that humanity's favorite pastime was survival, and the finale always had a twist no empire could predict. The stolen shuttle limped across the void, its hull scorched, alarms sputtering in 3 different alien dialects. Cale's hands were steady on the controls, but his eyes betrayed the calculations running in the background. Fuel low, pursuers inevitable, Lyra's injuries worsening. She sat in the co-pilot's seat, bandaging herself with strips of fabric torn from the med pack, her hands shaking not from fear, but from exhaustion. The plasma spear leaned against the console like a third passenger, silent testimony of what she had done. Cale glanced at her, and for a moment, the phantom of Orion softened. "You need rest. And you need a vacation," she shot back, her voice hoarse but edged with humor. "I'll sleep when we're not being hunted." He almost smiled, but the warship pursuing them appeared on the radar before the expression could form. Massive, angular, bristling with weaponry, the Arcari flagship, summoned by Varen's death. Cale's jaw tightened. "They'll want revenge. They'll want me," Lyra corrected quietly. Her gaze lingered on the viewport, watching the stars streak past. "I killed their commander. That makes me something." "Target," Cale said flatly. "Symbol. Threat. Doesn't matter what word they choose, Lyra. It means they won't stop." The shuttle shuddered as enemy fire clipped the tail. Warning lights flared crimson. Cale banked hard, skimming the orbit of a fractured moon. The flagship followed, relentless. "Options?" Lyra asked. "Run, fight, or die," Cale replied, flipping switches. "Running won't last. Fighting means suicide. Dying's not on the schedule." Her lips curved despite the tension. "Then make a 4th option." The ship shook again. Cale exhaled slowly, then set a course, straight into the moon's debris field. The field was chaos, shattered stone, metallic wrecks of ancient ships, clouds of dust that swallowed sensors. The Arcari hesitated at the edge, wary of pursuing prey into such madness. But Cale didn't hesitate. He piloted with the precision of a man who had long ago made peace with death, but refused to hand it the satisfaction. Lyra clutched the console, watching in awe as he threaded the shuttle between tumbling asteroids, each maneuver impossibly close. The flagship fired blind salvos, detonations scattering debris like shrapnel. "Cale!" she cried as a chunk of stone the size of city block tumbled toward them. He rolled the shuttle, engines screaming, and they slipped past with inches to spare. Lyra's laugh broke out, wild, incredulous. "You're insane. Married life prepared me," he muttered. And for an instant, the darkness lifted. But the Arcari adapted, launching drones into the field, smaller hunters designed for precision kills. They darted like metallic sharks, targeting the shuttle's engines. Cale fired back, his shots precise, but there were too many. Then Lyra grabbed the plasma spear. She staggered to the airlock, ignoring Cale's protest. "What are you doing?" he barked. "Buying time," she said. The lock hissed open, and vacuum clawed at her. She anchored herself, bracing the spear against the frame, and when the first drone streaked close, she lunged. The weapon tore through its hull, sparks erupting in silence. She wrenched it free, swung again, shattered another. Her body trembled, every muscle screaming, but her eyes burned with defiance. Kale's chest tightened as he watched. The woman he loved, the healer who had once sworn never to harm, was fighting like she had always been meant to stand at his side. Not as shadow to his storm, but as lightning of her own. The drones retreated, wreckage drifting lifeless among the rocks. The flagship's cannons flared again, tearing apart asteroids, closing in. Kale pulled Lyra back inside, sealing the airlock, his hands gripping her shoulders. Never again, he growled, fury masking fear. She met his gaze, weary but steady. You'd rather I sat quiet and waited to die? His silence admitted the truth. He would rather nothing harmed her, but he could not cage the fire that kept her alive. The climax came when the flagship itself entered the debris field, arrogance outweighing caution. Its colossal form split asteroids apart, cannons glowing with vengeful fury. Kale knew the shuttle couldn't outlast another barrage. He set a course directly toward the warship's underside. You're aiming at the belly of a Leviathan, Lyra whispered. Every Leviathan has a blind spot, he said. The shuttle skimmed along the flagship's hull, so close their metal scraped sparks against its armor. Kale released the last of the fuel reserves, igniting them in a sudden blaze. The explosion ripped across the debris, asteroids detonating in a chain reaction. The shockwave slammed the shuttle forward even as the flagship staggered, its shields buckling under the unexpected assault. System screamed. The shuttle tumbled end over end, alarms shrieking, lights dying. Kale wrestled the controls, forcing it upright, forcing survival out of inevitability. When the silence finally came, the flagship was crippled, drifting powerless, and the shuttle floated on the edge of destruction. They had survived, but at a cost. The engines were dead, fuel gone, power bleeding out. They drifted alone, fragile, two sparks in an endless dark. Hours passed in silence, broken only by the groan of failing systems. Lyra's wounds ached, her body slumped in exhaustion, but her mind refused surrender. Kale sat beside her, one hand on the console, the other holding hers. His face remained calm, but the stillness in his eyes betrayed the weight he carried. We might not make it, she murmured. We will, he answered. And if we don't, then at least together. The words settled between them, heavy yet freeing. Lyra leaned her head against his shoulder, closing her eyes. For once, Kale allowed himself stillness. The assassin stripped down to nothing but a man holding on to love. Rescue came not from miracle, but from humanity itself. A convoy of civilian ships, drawn by the explosions, stumbled upon them. Ordinary freighters, miners, traders, nothing glorious, just people. They pulled the shuttle aboard, faces wide-eyed at the sight of the infamous Phantom and the bloodstained nurse. News spread faster than light. An Arkari commander slain by a healer, a flagship crippled by two fugitives. Empires trembled at the story, not because of its scale, but because of what it revealed. Humanity was not predictable. Humanity was not fragile. Humanity fought with more than weapons. They fought with love, with loyalty, with the audacity to laugh in the jaws of death. In the days that followed, Lyra healed slowly. Kale remained at her side, silent sentinel, his hands steady as he wrapped her bandages. Gossip swept through the convoy. Admiration, fear, curiosity. Some muttered that no woman should marry a killer. Others whispered that perhaps it was love itself that made them dangerous. Through it all, Kale and Lyra said little. They did not need words. The silver wedding ring, returned to her finger, spoke louder than any oath. And you, reader, remember this lesson well. Power does not always roar. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it bleeds and trembles and refuses to fall. Empires are not undone by armies alone, but by two souls who refuse to let go of each other. And if love can survive in the void between stars, then so can you, wherever your battles are fought.